Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we are just 3 persons here. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I hope you managed to wake up.
Good morning.
Morning. I'm glad to meet you. My name is Professor Cristina Cristescu, and we will have together this semester physiology, lecture and labs. And I hope that we'll get along well. If you want to know something about my professional career, you feel free to ask me. If you want to know something about the topics that we'll discuss, I also explain it to you. But first, I would like to know something. Are you here in Romania now, or you are back home?
Most of us are back.
Most of you are back home. Why I'm asking you this is because we will study this semester the blood, and after that the cardiovascular, the respiratory system, and the cardiovascular system. And what is the most important thing to do in practice? It's the electrocardiography, meaning the cardiovascular system, the EKG. So I would prefer to invite you to the faculty for, let's say, 2 or 3 labs. Because I think this is the best way for you to see and to understand the electrocardiogram. This being like the fundamental for your career. No matter what the specialty you will choose, you must be able to interpret, to evaluate an electrocardiogram, and to see in a matter of seconds if there is something important going on there, if there is a life-threatening situation there or not. So we'll see what we can do, of course, considering all the situation being around us. But if it will be okay with you also, we will try to meet somehow in faculty. How do you feel about this? What's your opinion? Would you like to come in faculty for few or not? You will prefer to do it from home? Do you hear me?
Yes, miss. I think it's a good idea, but
Sorry, I can't hear you well. If you can repeat, please.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a good idea, and we just wait. I can come to Romania.
Well, we'll see. Somebody else?
I think it's a good idea. It's a good idea.
So please understand me, because I don't ask you to come just because I want. So I don't want to put you on the road, but I think I don't know, everything that's best for you, it works to be done. You know. So I'm sorry, I have to send a message. They'll come back to you. Okay, so we'll see about that. In the meantime, I told you that we will discuss about the blood first, then about the respiratory system, and just after that about the cardiovascular system. Today we will have an introductive, if you want, lecture, and also we'll have a lab, an introductive lab. And beside this, I will upload you a material which contains information that you are already supposed to know, but because I don't know you and I don't know exactly what you know and what you don't, I consider that it's better for you if you have a material to read, to study, to remind you something, or to learn if you don't know. Some informations about the biology of the cells, you know, the membrane, the structure. Some informations about the transport mechanism through the cell membrane. About the homeostasis, you know, the balance of the internal environment, the balance of the human body, if you want, it's called homeostasis, and the mechanism that the body uses in maintain this homeostasis. You know, something about the feedback regulation mechanism, positive feedback and negative feedback. You will find all these informations in this material. So beside the lab, you will have also this material, which reminds me of the fact that all the lectures and all the lab that I teach you will remain here in files. And during the exam, I will ask you questions only from these materials. Okay? So if you want to read, if you want to study from many other books, it's absolutely okay, because physiology, it's the same, you know. But as regard the questions during the exam, you will have questions only from the textbooks, if you want, that I gave you. Okay? So please study this one first and then extend your research and study activity. So if it's okay with you, we'll begin with this first lecture. Do you have any questions?
Someone sent you a message privately, in the group called.
Sorry?
Someone sent you a message in the call.
Okay, I will check on it. Thank you.
And another question, are you going to send us the lectures?
Sorry, you are? I can't. It seems to be a problem with my computer or something, or with the microphones, because I don't hear you very well.
I said, are you going to send us the lectures?
Yes, the lectures, all the lectures. I will upload the lectures in files. You will find all the lectures and all the labs here on Teams in files.
And also for, okay. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Welcome. And I will also upload you from time to time any material that I consider that you can find to be useful. Okay? There, just check the files and you will have all the informations there.
Are we allowed to record the lessons?
No, it's forbidden to record the lessons. You know, it's against the regulations. But you will have all the materials, and if you pay attention to my explanation, I think it's gonna be fine. So we begin with this first lecture.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so first, I think you already know this notion, but let's remind a little bit. Let's remind us a little bit of this. You know the notion of internal environment. We often use this term, internal environment and external environment. Well, this internal environment comes from a long time. As a matter of fact, as I wrote you down there, from somewhere in the 1800s. And it was for the first time described by a scientist called Claude Bernard. But from that moment until now, this internal environment suffered few changes in perception. And nowadays, about the internal environment, we think about literally all the fluids present inside the human body, meaning the blood, the plasma inside the blood, the lymph, the cerebrospinal fluid, the fluids present in that cavities, peritoneal cavity, that cavity, small cavity between the two pleuras, and so on, the pericardium. So all the fluids inside the human body, the fluids that play a major role for us, meaning that these fluids literally transport all the nutrients that we need, all the weights that we need to eliminate, and all the respiratory gases. So this fluid is very, very, very important for life, for the life of the human being. Now, the balance of this internal environment called, as we already mentioned, homeostasis. Okay, so when everything it's fine, it's in balance inside the human body, we called that the homeostasis, it's maintained. And in that material that I will upload, you will find many informations about how the human body managed to keep this homeostasis, okay, through those feedback mechanisms. Now, we said that this fluid is very important, but you realize that the most important component in this fluid is the water. And the water, the chemical formula of the water, I think everybody knows it's very as simple as it could be. So 2 hydrogens and 1 oxygen atom. But it's really important for us, related to the water molecule, are those properties of the water. So I mentioned you here the properties, and we will take one at a time, and I will try to explain you why these properties it's important for us and how does the human body use these properties. So the first one, it's called increased polarity, or if you want, the property, it's polarity, and the water molecule present an increased polarity. Another one, it's superficial heat, and the water present an increased superficial heat. So the next one, it's high heat of vaporization. Also, the water molecule also presents high thermal conductivity and an increased surface tension. But at this moment, those don't tell you anything. So let's take one by one and see what's really important. Well, what is the polarity? Imagine when you think of the water molecule, please imagine a magnet, a two-pole magnet. One pole is positive and another one is negative. This means polarity. This means increased polarity. Very well determined positive and negative pole. Due to these two poles, the water can attract a lot of substances towards the positive pole and another major part of substances to the negative pole. This is why the water is usually called universal solvent. Universal solvent. To be honest, it's not quite universal. It's almost universal solvent. But because of this polarity, because can solve some which are attached to the positive pole and others to the negative pole. Is it important for us? Yes, it's very important because this is how the water can transport all the nutrients and all the gases that we need. So due to this connection, due to this bond, due to this property of solving a lot of substances. Okay? So this is why the polarity is important. It does make sense for you?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah? Yes. Okay. Well, whenever you don't understand that something it's not really clear, stop me and ask me, okay? Because we need to make things clear if we want to understand, if we want to learn, because this is how we learn physiology. We are not in poetry class here. We don't memorize things like poems. We understand things. We understand the notion. We understand the mechanism. And then we can use those information in order to make connections and to understand how the human body works in normal condition. This means in health conditions. Okay? And next year, you will have physiopathology when, based on the physiology informations, you will be able to understand how does the body react in pathological situations, in conditions of different disease. Okay? Now, let's go to the second property. This is the specific heat. If you want, the definition sounds like this. The specific heat, it's the amount of heat required or necessary to increase the temperature of 1 gram of water by 1 degree Celsius. Okay, and the water has an increased specific heat, meaning 1 calorie. Now, let's see what does it really tells us. In order to understand this, I will tell you a few more things. First, you know that inside the human body, inside the internal organs, mainly in the liver, a lot of chemical reactions which produce a lot of energy. And when I tell you energy, I'm talking in terms of heat. Take place. So we have of reactions which produce energy, which produce something, their main effect, but besides their main effect, they also produce heat. So keep in mind this, we have a lot of heat generated inside the liver. On the other hand, don't forget that the liver and all the internal organs are very, very well irrigated, meaning that inside the liver are a lot of blood vessels, full with blood. I must tell you that 25% of the cardiac output goes directly to the liver. Why do you think that the nature put the things in this way? Well, it's easy to understand if we keep in mind another thing. So the first is that we have a lot of heat generated there. The second, we have a lot of blood, meaning a lot of water. And the third thing is that almost all our tissues consist of proteins. And the proteins in contact with high heat degenerate. It's like making fried eggs. I suppose at least once in your lifetime prepared or just seen somebody making fried eggs, you know, taking a pan, very hot pan, and then throwing the eggs into the pan. Did you see what's happened with the white egg? When you throw the egg, when you break the egg and put it in the pan, the white egg is transparent because at that point the proteins are okay. But in contact with the high heat, the protein degenerate and the protein precipitate and the color begins to be white. So the same thing would be happening in our body with the proteins inside all our tissues if the temperature of the body increases too much. So here comes the water, and this property of it, meaning the specific heat. So it's very important then that we have a lot of water in the body, which can accumulate a lot of temperature and remove this temperature from the internal organs and then conducts the heat towards the external environment, towards the tegument and through the tegument out of the body. So this is why this high specific heat of the water, it's important. It's actually preventing us from self-damaging, if you want. Okay? Prevents the precipitation of the proteins inside our tissues. Okay, is it clear enough for you? Do you need more explanation related to this property?
It's clear.
It's clear. Okay. The next one, it's called evaporation heat. And it means that we need a lot of energy to consume a lot of energy in order to transform a gram of water into vapors. So by now we transported the heat through the water and we reached the teguments, and now we will use another amount of energy, of heat if you want, in order to transform this water into vapors and to send it outside in the external environment. No? This is why we feel better in an external environment, even if it's hot, but if the external environment it's dry, if the humidity in the external environment it's increased, it becomes harder for us to transform this heat into vapors. Okay, so evaporation heat means that this is how we lose the excess heat from the body. It's a very important mechanism of cooling, if you want, the body. Thermal conductivity means that the water conducts the heat and will give this heat to a colder body or surface which we come in contact with. The definition from physics, of course, is that the thermal conductivity is the amount of heat transmitted from from the human body, let's say, per unit area, so first on surface, and per thickness in a given direction, meaning from the body which has a higher temperature to the other one, or to the external environment which has a lower temperature. Okay, in a given direction, in the presence of a temperature difference of at least 1 degree Celsius. So you know that the water conductivity coefficient is increased. And this is why, if you want to translate, if you want this information in other words, easier for you to understand, easier to manage this, it's something very simple, something that we all know, that tissues which has a great content of water are not good thermal insulators. On the other hand, tissues which have, let's say, a lot of fat, you know that the fat persons can stand better in cold weather without being uncomfortable. They support better the cold, but they cannot stand in heat because they cannot release the heat easily. Okay, so tissues which present a higher content of water are not good insulators, thermal insulators. And the last property is the surface tension. This one we use a little bit, but not so much, but I have to mention it to you. You know, this surface tension is that tangential force to the liquid surface, causing it to curve. Due to this property, if you want, when it rains, the water forms drops. Okay, this is how this tendency of forming drop appears. So these are the properties of the water. I think now you look at them in another perspective. The polarity, increased specific heat, high heat of vaporization, high thermal conductivity, and increased surface tension. Okay, so these are the properties. Again, we discussed, we said that the water is very, very important for us, for the human body in general. It's an essential component. But why is that? Well, it's simple. We said that it solves most of the substances, so it solves also the nutrients that we need. Carries or transport, if you want, the nutrients transport the respiratory gases, transport the waste. You know, in any chemical reaction, beside the important result, there is always a waste. The catabolites, the catabolism products are those wastes. And the water also transports this. The water is really the place where all the biochemical processes are, where everything takes place. It's the site, if you want, where all the exchanges takes place. The water also plays a very important role in thermoregulation. You will see how water managed to cool the body, and we will discuss. I don't know if you will discuss together with me or with somebody else next year in physiopathology, which are the mechanisms of the thermoregulation, the thermolysis and the thermogenesis. It's very important what the water does together with the vasomotricity, meaning the changes of the diameters of the blood vessels and how the muscles intervene and so on. So water is very important in thermoregulation. And last but not least, don't forget that the water, together with the proteins, represent the memory support. The memory support. You will see the water is very, very important for us. We can survive without food, depending on conditions, depending on many factors, but we can survive up to 30 days. So 1 month we can survive without food, but without water, we manage to survive somewhere between 4 and 10 days. So it's very important. Now, we said that we have a lot of water in the human body. As a matter of fact, somewhere between 60 and 75% of the body weight is represented by water. Okay, now this water, it's present, or we can find this water in two compartments, two fluid compartments. And these two main compartments are intracellular, meaning inside the cells, and the other one is extracellular, so outside the cells. Now, you have the percentage here, but you need to think of this like this. So we said that the total volume of water is 60%. So if total is 60, this means that 40% of this, so 40 from 60, okay, not from 100%, from 60, goes inside the intracellular compartment, and 20% of the water, of the body weight, okay, we will find in extracellular. This compartment, this extracellular compartment, it's divided into, and here you may find, if you look in different physiology books, you will find 2 subcompartments, and in other ones you will find 3 subcompartments. I mentioned you all 3 of them, and you also will see why some scientists mention just 2 and some others which are more thoroughly mention also the 3rd one. So extracellular, it's composed of intravascular, so inside the vessels, which is not so important if you want in terms of percentage, just 4% of the body weight. Interstitial, meaning between the cells, between the tissues, 15% of body weight. And the last one, transcellular, we have here just 1%. What means transcellular? Transcellular refers to the water that right in this moment passes through the cell membrane. So it's just 1%. This is why some of the scientists don't mention this compartment and resume everything to intravascular and interstitial. Okay? Don't forget this. Don't forget the percentage because it's very important. And we will discuss about them. And we also will discuss how the water moves from one compartment to another and what causes the water to go from one side to another or to be eliminated. So these are the compartments. Now, the total volume of water in the body depends on few factors, on few physiological factors, okay? So now we talk about just the normal factors during health. One of the factors is the age of the person. I think you know that the amounts of water decrease with aging. Why is that? I think the most important factor here is that old people don't have this thirst impulse, thirst sensation. They drink less water than they should be. This is why they are very dehydrated. This is why in old people you will find that dehydrated skin. And if you really pinch a little bit the dorsal face of the hand of an old people and you lift the skin a little bit and then release it, you will see that the skin goes very, very slow downwards to the normal position. So this is the sign of dehydration. Okay, this doesn't happen in a baby or in a young person. So once we're getting old and older, the content of water decreases. Okay. The gender, it's another factor that influences the amounts of water in the body. And this, I told you that in men, the water content is higher than in women. Why is that? What do you have I don't know. What's your opinion? Why is this happening? Why in men we have a higher content of water than in women?
Teacher,
Maybe because there are a lot of fat in women, respective men.
Yes, this is one factor, right? And beside this?
When you say that the amount of water decreases, you mean the capacity of stocking water, or do you mean just the amount of water in general?
The amount of water in general present in the body. Listen, I want to tell you something. I literally ask you something. Feel free to communicate with me. Tell me your opinion. Answer the question. Talk to me because it's very important. This is how we learn. Don't misinterpret a wrong answer. Now, when we teach, when we prepare ourselves of becoming a doctor, except the exam, of course, there is no wrong answer. How can I tell you this? It's okay to be wrong because you learn and because everybody learns. Don't feel ashamed to talk thinking about, oh, if I don't know and if my answer will not be the correct one, what will my colleagues say? Because if you don't know, most likely a lot of your colleagues don't know. And it's okay to be like this. It's normal. If you already knew all the answers, you wouldn't be studying medicine. You would be practicing it. And even when you practice, even you are like, I don't know, like me in my shoes, I also make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. From mistakes, we learn. Okay, let's say that I asked you a question and you gave me a wrong answer. Even if we laughed of it a little bit, in time you will remember, okay, so she asked me that was not good. It means that the other answer is good. So this is how we learn. So it's okay to be wrong. Don't worry about it. Okay, feel free to communicate. Just talk, ask, be. When we're having physiology, imagine that we are having a cup of coffee and we talk about various things. Okay, it's the easiest way to relax, and it's the best way to learn. Trust me on that. If you learn with pleasure, if you learn something being relaxed, being okay, you learn it very, very easy. You learn difficult informations, very difficult, tricky mechanism with like, okay, so it's normal. And this is what you need to do. You have a lot of learning ahead of you. And you need to understand and to master those informations, because in your activity, you will be always facing one, I don't know, let's say enemy, and this is time. You will always be pressed to make your connections in few seconds, even less than seconds, to give answers, to take decisions. And you cannot do this if you don't understand very, very well the things that they are happening. So in order to do this, please be relaxed. Please tell me whatever you're thinking, and we will discuss if it's okay, why is it okay, if it's not, why it's not, okay, and how I will try to guide you how and to teach you how to think from medical point of view, okay? So please just be yourself, in other words. So coming back to this second factor, to the gender, our colleague just told us that in women we have a lot of fat compared to men, which is correct. But there is something else going on. In men, we have a better represented muscular tissue, and the muscles consist of a lot of water. Why is that? Because the muscles need to be fed in order to survive and to develop. This tissue needs to be irrigated. It needs a lot of nutrients, and those nutrients come with a lot of water. So due to the muscular mass, which is better represented, the men have a higher content of water compared to women. Obesity, it's another factor, and our colleague just told about this. Obesity, it's hydrophobic, it's opposite to water, it's against water. So in fat tissue, we have less water. Okay, so the higher the fat tissue, lower the content of the water. Okay, so these are the main factors that influence the content of water. But Please don't imagine that we have the same amounts of water in all our tissues. There are some which are higher content, which are rich in water, and there are some with less or minimum amounts of water. The greatest amounts of water we will find in blood plasma, of course, where we have mostly water in plasma. And the smallest amounts of water, it's in the enamel, in dental enamel. And here we have just 0.2%. Okay? So on one pole, we have the plasma with 90% water, and the other one, the enamel, the dental enamel, with 0.2. Well, if you want to mention some tissues which have a lot of water, you can mention the brain or the cerebral tissue with 85%. Then the kidneys. Why the kidneys? Because there in the glomerulus we have a lot of blood vessels full with blood, and there are they have 80%, or if you want 80% of the kidney tissue, it's represented by water. The muscular tissue, 70% of the muscular tissue consists of water. So this is how you express this.
Right.
Yes, please.
Cerebral, you mean by the cerebral, you mean the brain, and
Yes.
by the renal, you mean
The brain. The cerebral means the brain, and the renal, it's the kidneys or arteries. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the percentage here, interpret like this: 80. Let's take the kidneys. Okay, the renal tissue. 80% of the renal tissue, it's water. Okay, not 80% of the total water, it's in the renal tissue. It's a difference here. Okay, 85% of the brain, it's water. And on the other hand, tissues that consist a lot less water, it's the fat or the adipose tissue with just 35%, the bones with 22%, dentin 1%, and the enamel, the dental enamel, 0.2%. Okay, so the distribution, what you need to remember, of the water in the tissues, it's uneven. I told you that the water is the support, it's the matrix, if you want, for life. I told you that we can survive without water just a few days, somewhere between 4 and 10 days. We need to understand better, and we need to keep in balance this intake and elimination of water. By the way, this intake and elimination, it's called in medicine increta. Increta comes from Latin. Increta means intake, and excreta, increta, excreta, balance. Excreta meaning elimination, excretion of water. Okay, now let's see from where the water comes. So the origins of the water in the body. We have two origins for the water which is present in our body. First, the most important one, it's from drinking or eating foods with an important or not so important content of water, so in ingestion of fluids. But besides this, we also produce a little amount of water inside our tissues due to the oxidative reactions. Okay, so exogenous source by ingestion of fluids, and endogenous source from cellular oxidative reactions. So this is the increta, if you want, okay, the intake of water. Now the excreta, the elimination, the excretion of water. So we lose water mainly through urine, sweating, and perspiration. And you know, there is a difference between sweat and perspiration. Sweat, it's the secretion produced of the sudoripary glands, and the perspiration is that thin film of water present on the surface of the human body. It's simple water which passes through our membrane, through our skin, in order to cool the body, okay, to be evaporated. So now we know the increta, we know the excreta. What we need to know is how we control them. We will talk about this in details, but for now we need to know that the intake, it's governed, it's controlled, if you want, by the thirst, the sensation of thirst. You know, when you are dehydrated, first thing that you feel is that your mouth became dry, okay? And you need, your body sends you this urgent signal: drink some water, drink some fluids, I don't know, drink whatever you want, a beer if you want, but don't drink coffee or alcohol because you will eliminate a lot of water. So you need to drink water mainly. So the dryness of the oral mucosa, okay, the thirst. And the elimination, it's controlled by neurohumoral mechanisms. And it's performed, as you already know, by kidneys through the filtration and reabsorption and secretion. You know, the urine, it's the result of three mechanisms: filtration, which is a physical process; reabsorption, because something that just passed through the glomerular membrane into the glomerular tubes may be needed by the body, and the body will reabsorb this, being water or some other substances. And the third process is the secretion. If something presents, I don't know, a greater molecule than the gaps in that network, in that glomerular membrane, and cannot pass through those gaps, and must be also eliminated from the body because it will harm us, will be eliminated by this secretion process. But when we come to when we'll get to the kidneys, to the renal physiology, we will talk there. So again, the control of intake of water, it's performed by thirst, and the elimination, it's neurohumoral, and it's performed by kidneys, by this process.
What does neurohumoral mean?
Meaning nervous, meaning that the nervous system is involved, and also some substances, some hormones, and some humors of the body. This means neurohumoral. It's literally a word composed of other two, nervous and humoral. Okay, for instance, if we talk about the water, we would talk here about the information, the impulses which lives from the hypothalamus. So this is the nervous regulation. And on the other hand, we talk about aldosterone, which is a hormone involved in reabsorption of the sodium, and due to this, in the reabsorption of water. And we have another hormone involved here, which is antidiuretic hormone, which prevents the dehydration, if you want. Okay, so neurohumoral, it's a mix of nervous and humoral mechanism. Okay?
Excuse me, I have a curiosity actually.
Please.
You say that the coffee use a lot of water.
Yeah, the coffee, it's a diuretic. It's produce an intense diuresis. So let's say that you drink a coffee, I don't know, you drink 100 milliliters of coffee, and you think that, okay, I had an intake of water because coffee is, okay, coffee, but there is also water inside of it. But on the other hand, in 20 minutes, half an hour, sometimes less or more than this, you will have diuresis, and the water that you lose, it's higher than the content that you intake.
Thank you very much.
So on the other hand, but I don't misunderstand me, I don't advise you to do this, but if you want to hydrate better, you may drink a beer if you want, not a coffee.
I'll take the advice.
It's not an advice, but keep in mind, if you don't have water at your disposal, it's better to have a beer. Okay? And also the beer influences the kidneys to produce then, but we will talk about this in physiopathology. There are situations of kidney blockage when a beer solved a problem, but don't take it as a medicine, okay? So this is like something that we talked off the records, okay?
Thank you very much.
So let's move forward. Okay, so as long as the balance is maintained, everything is all right. But you know that it's impossible to maintain a balance all the time. So if we have a disbalance, we can have in terms of losing water, which will produce dehydration, or in terms of an increased intake of water, which is hyperhydration. Okay? What we didn't discuss is how the water moves and what determines the water to move from a compartment to another. So first, you know that the water is present in the blood, inside the vessels. You know that the blood, it's pushed by the heart, by the left ventricle to the systemic circulation and the pulmonary circulation. I think you are familiar with this. But so the blood is pushed during the ventricular systole into the aorta, then it goes to the smaller and smaller arteries, arrives to the meta-arterioles, arterioles, and finally at the capillaries. So here is the only place where the blood vessel walls present some, let's say, some gaps. There are not gaps that are called fenestre. And here also there are some specific pores just for water called aquaporinae. And also here the water may come out from the blood vessel and then enter into the interstitial space and then inside the cells. using some protein channels and using some carrier proteins. Okay, so due to the physics laws of hemodynamics, water leaves the capillaries, enter into the interstitial space and then inside the cells. And then at the venous pole of the capillaries, because the capillaries continues with small veins, which are called venules. And here the water has another direction from the cells inside the interstitial space and then enters into the veins, the smallest veins. So then the veins confluent one to another, and to another, and to another. And so the blood will come back to the heart through those two main veins, which are called superior and inferior vena cava. But I'm sure that you know all this from anatomy and from the biology that you studied in high school. What I wanted you to know is that only at the capillary level, the water and the nutrients may leave the vessels and enter into cells. Of course, first into the interstitial space and then into the cells. There's no possibility to leave before the capillary levels, and not even in the venous system, because those don't present that fenestre, that pores, that gaps, if you want. Okay, now which forces determines the direction of the water? Imagine this. Imagine that we have a blood vessel, or if you have a glass full of water, we have two kinds of forces, of pressures, if you want. The first one, it's called hydrostatic pressure. Well, this hydrostatic pressure, it's the pressure exerted by the column of water or fluid of blood or whatever liquid you have there towards the walls of the blood vessel or towards the glass walls. And this force tends to push out the water from the vessel or from the glass. So this is the hydrostatic pressure, okay? Pushes out the water. This is its tendency. Higher the hydrostatic pressure, greater the force, higher the tendency of leaving the vessel. The other force, in medicine, we use the term of colloid osmotic pressure. As a matter of fact, here, as you can say by the name, we reunite two pressures. Colloid means the pressure exerted by the plasma proteins, and osmotic means the pressure exerted by the electrolytes. Okay, so we use the name of colloid osmotic pressure, or if you want oncotic or colloid, for us it's the same thing. What you need to remember is that this pressure, these proteins, tends to keep the water inside the blood vessels. Okay, so now we have two forces. One, which push the water outside the blood vessel, and this one was called, do you remember the name for the first force, the first pressure? hydrostatic pressure, it pushes the water to get out of the vessels. And the other one is the colloid osmotic pressure, which keeps the water inside. So at the capillary, we have at the arteriolar end of the capillary, we have greater hydrostatic force and smaller colloid osmotic one. So if you make the math, you will see that the water will be forced to leave the vessel and to enter inside the cells. And at the venous or venular pole of the capillary, the greater force is that one, or the greater pressure is that one of colloid osmotic one. Colloid osmotic, it's higher than the hydrostatic. So this is why the water is attracted, or it's determined to get into the vessel. So this is how the water circulates inside the blood vessels, and from the blood vessels inside the cells, and then come back into the vessels. Okay? Again, if we talk about disbalance, we can have dehydration when we lose water, or hyperhydration. But don't forget those compartments that we talked at the beginning of the lecture. We said that we can find water inside the cells, and this was the intracellular compartment, or outside the cells, which is extracellular compartment, okay? So this is why you may say that you have, let's say, dehydration or hyperhydration for each one of these compartments. The extracellular dehydration, or extracellular or intracellular dehydration, okay? Or we can have both, let's say, dehydration in both of those compartments, which is called systemic dehydration. When do we get this extracellular dehydration? Usual when we lose the sodium inside the plasma, or when we have a diet poor in salt. This is what happened. Salt means sodium, you know. Or if we have some medical conditions, some diseases which also involve diarrhea or vomiting or profuse sweating. The cellular dehydration occurs during febrile sickness. And the systemic dehydration, this is most likely caused by the lack of the ingestion of the fluids, the liquids. Or when we have a problem, a serious problem at the kidney level, and we have a very, very increased diuresis. Okay, we will come back to this. In other words, we can say that we can have normotone, hypotone, or hypertone dehydration or hyperhydration. What means normotone? Normotone meaning almost equal amounts of water and sodium. And if we talk about hyperhydration, and we say that we have a normotone hyperhydration, means that we have a retention of water and sodium. Water and sodium. Hypotone hyperhydration, we kept most water, not sodium, okay? And hypertone, we kept a lot of sodium, not water. And so on, okay? Cellular hyperhydration. Cellular hyperhydration produces mostly when the water moves from the vessels inside the cells. So it's connected with the extracellular dehydration. And we will see what causes it to go inside the cells. Systemic hyperhydration occurs in that pathological condition which is known as poisoning with water. Poisoning with water. There are some persons which drink excessive water. It's like a psychotic problem for them to drink a lot of water, in excessive intake of water. But beside this, we can have a lot of mixed disorders, okay? And we will discuss them separately. But again, what I want you to remember from this lecture is that that definition of the internal environment comprises all the fluids in the human body, fluids which are very important because there take place all the necessary reactions for the living of the human beings. Okay. The most important component is the water. Don't forget where we can find the water, which are the compartments, which are the percentage for each compartment. Don't forget these properties of the water molecule and how the body uses these properties. Don't forget that the water goes out from the vessel or comes out from the cell and enters into a vessel due to the hemodynamics laws. Don't forget about those pressures that I mentioned. And don't forget that it's very, very important to keep in balance the intake and the elimination of water. And we can do this through neurohormonal mechanisms and through this thirst sensation. So I think it's clear, this lecture. Please read it again. If you want my opinion, it's better to learn with a piece of paper beside you and, I don't know, a pen or a pencil and make your own notes there. Note what is important and then just what is important. You don't need to write again the whole lecture, but write the important things and then look just to your notes and try to fill the gaps between those main things that you wrote. This is the way to learn better. Or if you want, try to explain to somebody after you learn. Try to explain the lesson. Try to explain something from the lesson to somebody else. This is the moment when you learn better everything. Okay, so how is your opinion? How do you feel about this first lecture?
It was a great lecture.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, so now we take a pause because I have another lecture with your colleagues from the Romanian module. And after that, we will meet for the lab at, I don't know, 2 o'clock? Where is it?
Yeah.
2 o'clock, yes.
2 o'clock. Okay, so thank you very much. I enjoyed this lecture with you and see you later.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
But
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.